Greetings, I'm Anastasia Dmitrovskaya, and right now all the most important news. The Russians struck a Ukrainian armed forces training center in Dnipropetrovsk region with an Iskander missile. Record losses for Russian aviation in a single day. A unique special operation. The security service of Ukraine staged an unprecedented fire show at enemy airfields. They reached as far as Siberia. More than 40 bombers destroyed. Meanwhile, in the Sumy region, the enemy advanced. New territories under occupation. There is panic in the Kremlin. Rumor has it that the replacement for Putin has already been found. I'll tell you about all this and more coming up. For now, I ask you to like this video and subscribe to our channel to support what we do. The Russians struck an Iskander missile at a training unit of the Ukrainian ground forces in the Dnipropetrovsk region.
We emphasize that there were no formations or mass gatherings of personnel taking place. After the air raid alert was announced, most of the personnel were in shelters. All necessary qualified medical assistance is being provided to the injured.
The command of the ground forces of the armed forces of Ukraine also reported that a commission has already been established and an official investigation has been launched.
If it is determined that the deaths and injuries of the servicemen were caused by the actions or inaction of officials, those responsible will be held strictly accountable.
Preliminary reports indicate 12 dead and more than 60 wounded. We express our condolences to the families and loved ones of the deceased and injured. Today, Russia is celebrating Military Transport Aviation Day. The security service of Ukraine extends its formal greetings.
This is how the Belaya airfield looks right now. Pretty impressive. Strategic enemy aviation.
The security service of Ukraine struck at 5 military airfields at once. Belaya, Diaghilevo, Olenia, Ivanovo, and Voskresensk in the Moscow region.
The number 11, which is 11.
Look at what's happening. I don't even know what just exploded.
As a result of the SBU's Special Operation Web on Russian territory, at least 40 bombers were hit, including the A-50, Tu-95MS, and Tu-22. Preliminary estimates put the damage at $2 billion. The airfields were attacked with drones, and just listen to this. They launched the drones from a truck.
What kind of drone is that?
A Ukrainian one.
A Ukrainian one? And what's burning over there? What's burning over there?
Yeah, I figured out what the cargo was doing. A truck pulled up to the parking lot, and drones took off from it.
And after launching the drones, these trucks self-destructed.
I had just taken a glass. Thought how nice it is to relax. Took a breath.
The publication Clash, literally in the first minutes of this SBU special operation, called it unique, since the damage caused by this operation is absolutely disproportionate to the cost spent on it. One FPV drone costs up to $600. A modernized Russian Tu-95MS aircraft costs from $100 million. That's a more than 100,000-fold difference in cost. Clash. The security service of Ukraine prepared the web special operation for more than a year and a half.
This operation was extremely complex from a logistical standpoint. The security service of Ukraine first smuggled drones into the Russian Federation and later mobile wooden cabins. Later, on the territory of the Russian Federation, the drones were hidden under the roofs of the cabins, which were already loaded onto cargo trucks. At the right moment, the roofs of the cabins were remotely opened. The drones then took off to strike the Russian bombers.
And in the Kremlin, you won't believe it, they called an emergency meeting and are already threatening to hit back with a decisive response.
That was already the case.
Yeah, it has. And something tells me it will happen again. So everyone, please pay very close attention right now. In the coming days, do not ignore air raid alerts. It's clear that the Russians will launch massive attacks on Ukraine. So head to shelters and take care of yourselves and your loved ones. A deep bow and huge thanks to the guys from the security service of Ukraine for their fantastic work. Gentlemen, that was just wow! But we also have some not-so-happy news. In the Sumy region, the Russians have finally taken over Vodolaga, Volodymyrivka, and Kostiantynivka. This was reported by a soldier with the call sign Machnoy.
Right now, fighting is ongoing for Oleksivka and Kindrativka. In the area of Yunakivka, the enemy hasn't made significant advances, but they're putting on a lot of pressure using drones and glide bombs. The enemy has also become more active in the Alexandria area.
The enemy has also managed to occupy another settlement in the Sumy region, the village of Volodymyrivka in the Khotin community. As we can see, Putin's troops are pushing forward and advancing, while the Kremlin's so-called desire for peace is nothing but pearls they scatter before Trump. That is why, says serviceman Alexander Matyas, we now have to involve all citizens of Ukraine in the war. Otherwise, Ukraine may simply cease to exist as an independent state.
The volunteers have run out. That is, the people who are joining now are doing so out of necessity. By the way, there are also a lot of contract soldiers. New guys have come in, older men too. There are people who have been mobilized, bussified, as they say. Somehow the army is being replenished, but it's not enough. We simply need to realize that if, in this war, if all citizens of Ukraine, including women and even pensioners, are not involved in this war, in achieving victory in this war, then we will not win. Well, Ukraine will cease to exist as an independent unitary state.
The Russians also tried to break through in the Siversk area. Enemy assault troops on 8 motorcycles advanced toward the positions of the 10th Separate Mountain Assault Brigade. However, the Edelweiss Brigade fighters gave the enemy a tough response. Narrator. And while the Edelweiss unit was giving the enemy a hard time near Siversk, the Ukrainian intelligence was stirring things up near the Russian city of Saransk. Yes, that's the very same Saransk, which is located more than 600 kilometers from the Ukrainian border.
Their internet was cut off. Basically, the private sector sent them this, saying it was a drone attack. And basically, they started, the factory in half of Saransk. And yesterday, the internet was cut off again. Today, I have no idea what's going on there. Only his mother knows. Well, and when, they were shelling there, did anyone get hurt on your side? What? 5300?
Host. And also, our guys made some noise on the railway near Melitopol. A Russian military freight train was blown up there. The explosion occurred at night on May 31st near the temporarily occupied Yakimivka in the Zaporizhzhia region.
Narrator. The freight train was heading toward the temporarily occupied Crimea. As a result of the explosion on the railway track, the train with fuel tankers and freight cars derailed. The key logistical artery of the Russians in the occupied territories of the Zaporizhzhia region and Crimea has been disrupted.
Host, at the same time, I urge you to support the Ukrainian military, to support not only with words but also with actions. Support the defense forces. They are protecting our peace, yours and mine, and they are fighting for our freedom.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Host. In Russia's Bryansk region, a road bridge has collapsed from exhaustion. Host. Russian media report that the bridge collapsed right onto the Klimovo-Moscow passenger train, which was passing underneath at the time, causing the locomotive and several carriages to derail. There are dead and injured. And the Moscow Railway has already stated that the cause of the collapse was illegal interference in transport operations. They claim it could have been sabotage. It is suggested that one of the bridge supports may have been blown up. But that's not all. In the morning, Russian media reported that there were more explosions on the railway in the Bryansk region. They write that unknown individuals allegedly blew up the tracks on the Unekazhicha section. Well, things like that happen too. So-called illegal interference in transport operations also occurred in the Kursk region. There, a railway bridge collapsed. As a result of the collapse, the locomotive simply fell onto the road below, causing the diesel engine to catch fire. Preliminary reports indicate that one of the train drivers was injured. And in fact, there is already a statement from the Investigative Committee of Russia saying that the bridges in the Bryansk and Kursk regions collapsed due to an explosion. However, the word undermining was later removed. The explosions on the bridges in the Kursk and Bryansk regions occurred right on the eve of the second round of peace talks in Istanbul, which are scheduled for June 2nd. And this looks more like the Kremlin is sabotaging its own infrastructure in order to disrupt the negotiations. This was reported by Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation.
Andriy Kovalenko. It seems that the Kremlin is laying the groundwork to derail the negotiations by launching an image attack against Ukraine in the international media space. Once again, there is a temptation to portray us as a terrorist state in order to avoid dialogue and continue the summer offensive, which has already begun in Sumy region, in Zaporizhzhia region, and is ongoing in the east.
Host, Kovalenko also emphasized that Ukraine has no motive whatsoever to disrupt the negotiations. But Russia's summer offensive has already begun. And what do you think? Was it a sabotage and reconnaissance group? Or did Kremlin KGB agents organize such terrorist attacks themselves? Host, meanwhile, as we are fighting here, the world is learning from our war. During the Sabre Strike exercises in Finland, NATO troops practiced a scenario similar to the battle for Hostomel. Yes, the very same one when, at the start of the full-scale invasion, the Russians tried to seize the airport and turn it into a staging ground for their advance on Kyiv. So, according to Business Insider, Finnish and Polish troops simulated an airborne landing on a runway in order to capture the airfield and hold it until the main forces arrived. In short, exactly what the Russians tried to do in the Kyiv region. Another interesting point, Finland, which does not have its own airborne troops, invited Polish paratroopers to the exercises in order to practice the most realistic scenario possible. And yes, NATO officially confirms that the scenario is based on Ukraine's experience. Alliance countries, especially those bordering Eritrea, are studying our battles and drawing conclusions from them for their own security. What do you think? Does everyone already understand that Putin will go further? Write your thoughts in the comments. Host, meanwhile, in the Kremlin, they are already pushing through a plan to change the government and are even preparing a replacement for Putin. At least according to the Telegram channel VCHKGPU, citing its sources, the so-called plan to change the government is being pushed by media mogul Mikhail Kovalchuk, who is close to Putin, controls key sectors, and surrounds Putin with his own people. Meanwhile, Kovalchuk removes those people from Putin's inner circle whom he doesn't like.
Andriy Kovalchenko. Kovalchuk determines who is in Putin's entourage. It's no secret that he doesn't really like Arkady Rotenberg. And voila! At Putin's last birthday, Arkady Rotenberg, for the first time, didn't get the chance to personally congratulate his childhood friend. All access routes to Putin are now cut off for Rotenberg. Recently, a personal plane from the Russia airline has been assigned to Kovalchuk. He travels accompanied by FSO officers. Top officials line up just to get 5 minutes of his attention. Look, even the mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin, hangs on his every word.
Host? In fact, Kovalchuk is fighting against opponents within the system and is lobbying for the idea of appointing Putin's daughter, Katerina Tikhonova, as the successor to the Russian dictator in the 2026 elections. This is supposedly meant to ensure a hereditary transfer of power in a monarchical style. Well, what can I say? There's quite a lot of scheming going on over there.
Andriy Kovalchenko. However, many believe that Putin will never voluntarily give up power and will rule for life. But earlier this month, he said, "When I think about it, and I think about it constantly, of course, I believe that there should be a person or even better, several people, so that people have a choice. Someone who could earn the trust of the country's citizens."
Host, and what do you think? Will Putin eventually be pressured into making his daughter his successor? Or is that something out of the realm of science fiction? Host, they exchanged them and immediately sent them to the front. Or the peculiarities of Russian prisoner exchanges. In fact, a video is now actively circulating online in which a relative of one of the exchanged Russian soldiers complains that the former prisoners of war never made it home. The woman says that after the exchange, the men had their phones, personal belongings, and even their crosses taken away and were sent under guard to the front line. Our guys went through hell in captivity. Numerous tortures and abuses, most have shrapnel wounds and concussions, fractures that healed without medical intervention, and one of them has no leg. They all need medical assistance to undergo a military medical commission and ultimately a leave. But instead, these sick men are being sent to the front line. No. We are asking for help to find out the whereabouts of our guys and to prevent them from being sent to the front line. Me, to the front line. Host, honestly, I just sincerely can't understand how with such treatment there are still, forgive me Lord, people willing to fight for this sorry excuse of an empire. Please like this video to support what we do and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes.